gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So I want to talk about this conversation that happened on Secular Talk between Cenk Uygur, Krystal Ball, and Kyle Kulinksi. I haven't actually talked about Secular Talk very much. I've talked plenty about TYT, Cenk Uygur. Secular Talk hasn't come up much, even though I watch Kyle and I like him a lot. I think he does pretty good work, although his style of content isn't what I gravitate to the most naturally. I still think he does an excellent job when it comes to coverage, and also his expansion of his audience and the way he has sort of calibrated and curated his audience over the years, I think is really impressive. And I think he's also an example of what I've talked about a little bit on this platform, which is the idea that like having a little bit less overhead, having a smaller operation allows you to be more lean and more adaptable in your coverage and in your content style. He's one of very few that has broken through the kind of barrier of that sort of left-wing aesthetic that not everybody finds relatable, even though many people might agree with the positions. They're not as quick to define themselves as left-wing or anything left of liberal. I just think he's done a good job at building up a progressive audience, and him and Cenk are kind of a good comparison with each other. Krystal Ball as well, although her career has taken shape in sort of a different way. But yeah, so I mean, I think this conversation was about as unproductive as you would expect, but there were some really interesting moments. And even though we're all sick of Cenk, and I don't really like following everything that he does, I am also paying attention to him because I'm not fully convinced that there's not an earnest project behind what he is trying to do, even though a lot of people are just convinced that it's a grift, because trying to sort of ingratiate yourself to right-wing audiences and right-wing platforms in the way that he has done is kind of a dead ringer for the fact that you're kind of selling out your values, right? And it does at least appears on the surface that Cenk is doing certain things that compromise the vision that we've always known him to have. But the more I've listened to him talk about this stuff, I see kind of what his perspective is. And I feel like in this conversation between him, Kyle, and Krystal, I can really see pretty clearly what it is that's getting in the way of Cenk getting his message across the way that he wants to. Because although I think there might be some perverse incentives involved, and like I was saying about having a lean operation, I think Cenk kind of has the opposite problem, where because he has built out his operation, he now has a lot of financial obligation, and so that causes you to have to look for money in your ventures rather than just saying whatever you want to say and finding ways to monetize that, which is what Kyle has done. So I think that puts Cenk in a position where he does have to search for revenue sources, he does have to search for backers, and he does have to search for ways to engage audiences. But aside from all of that, and all of that's worth analyzing for sure, but I also, I look at Cenk's consistency when it comes to trying to make a dent in terms of progressive politics, even though he's tried many different ways of doing it. Many of them are kind of shambolic or whatever. But he's also, made a lot of earnest attempts, like things like Justice Democrats, and even some of the projects that he's doing now. It's unclear exactly how all this stuff is going to turn out when it comes to Cenk, or what it's going to end up being. But what I see is him going on every single platform that he can, trying to get people on board with this idea that a coalition can be built against Trump, even including some of the people who voted for Trump. That seems to be what Cenk is at least saying he wants to do. So I'll play a little bit from this debate. It was a long debate, and I think some of it's behind a paywall. So maybe not that much worth watching, but I do think there are some great moments from it, and it is informative about like where the stick in the mud is happening in this conversation. It's also just funny because Kyle and Cenk are just like screaming at each other, and Krystal Ball keeps her cool, but she gets screamed at like way more by Cenk because of that. It's ridiculous. I'll talk more about that later, but yeah, let's play a little bit here.
Did the Pentagon budget get cut? Just tell me that. What's the Pentagon budget? Did it get cut?
You've now asked me 28 questions.
Did Don Jr., did he do whatever with the generals? Did that work out?
All right, guys, look, I came on here because, look, you're generally fair. So you asked me 28 questions, and then let me answer them. So, and stop framing it as if I'm a different person. You keep making all these assumptions about who I am. Oh, are you on the Republican side or the Democratic side?
I'm literally citing things that you said, Cenk. Like, I played your clip of what you said.
Christ,
turn to the camera.
Okay,
hey, tell me if I'm wrong.
Crystal, I'm right here. I'm right here. Can I talk for myself instead of you?
You
like,
specifically held on the Pentagon budget.
At this point, borderline lying about me in every framing of every question. Can I actually be a human being named
How am I lying? Tell me how I'm lying.
Questions instead of you framing
Tell me how I'm lying,
me as a
Cenk.
person that doesn't exist?
Cenk,
okay?
I played the clip of you talking, so tell me how I'm lying.
Okay. All right. So now, of all your questions, you have this fantasy land that Trump was like, oh, the left thinks Abrego Garcia's I've treated him wrong. I surrender, left. Come on, what planet do you live on? No, the courts are not left or right. The courts have held. I'm thrilled that the courts have held. And it was so important for the courts to hold. So if they didn't hold on that, he was gonna have unlimited authoritarian power. And we are against that, no matter how many times people try to pretend that we're on the side of Trump. Listen to what I am actually saying, and you will see this every day on the Young Turks. I am against Trump, totally, okay? Now, okay, yes, but why do you love Trump will be the next question. Okay.
Did I ask that? The Pentagon did not get cut, and actually what happened is all of the liberal and left organizing against Tesla, against the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, against Elon directly, tanked his popularity to the point that Trump felt he was a political liability and the whole project had to be scrapped. So the tactic of let's work with them and try to cut the Pentagon budget failed. The tactic of let's resist this project outright and make the case and make Elon himself politically toxic succeeded.
So, Krystal, we do live in two different worlds. It's fascinating to see. It's amazing to see. So, number one, the project of saying cut the Pentagon worked. Why did it work? Because they cut the Pentagon, they magically became progressives overnight? No, it worked because it showed and highlighted their hypocrisy. So let me try explaining it this way and see if I can get through to you guys. So you keep telling me all the things that Trump did wrong. Of course he did. So I'm saying that it's a given that he's always going to do, for example, 90% of things massively wrong. And in the other 10% that he plans to do wrong, I'm saying we have a fighter's chance if we ally and we show hypocrisy or we get allies. It's a win-win either way, okay? So for example, in opposing the war, either they become our allies and somehow at some point we stop this war, or we show, oh, you guys never meant it. Now you're the pro-war party, which makes us much more likely to win over independence and win the next election. Yeah, okay, so let's go to Rogan. So all those things that Trump did are show what a fraud he is, right? So now when you go to Rogan and you say, well, you voted for him anyway, so that means you're a liar and a fraud. Okay, so that's one strategy. And hey, you're more belligerent.
It's not a strategy.
Rogan,
I don't want him.
Shove it in his face. Okay?
I don't want him, Cenk. He's gone. He's done. He's Rush Limbaugh.
Kyle, can I answer? Okay. So now, I, on the other hand, am saying, look, I know that Rogan obviously made the wrong decision. Obviously, he doesn't know all that we know or doesn't care about all that we know about what Trump did in his first term. On the other hand, his audience being what it is, there was no way that he was going to support Kamala Harris. Okay, but what do we do going forward? Okay, going forward, my point is we are better off fighting Trump and his policies 200%, being as belligerent as you like. But go on Rogan and do it again and again and again. Pound that message home so that his viewers, his listeners hear it, and so that he hears it. And it is
I'm
also
doing
a
TYT's
terrible-
old
look, I'm trying
strategy.
super hard not to say it's a dumb strategy.
Why are you okay with the right
right?
playing by different rules, Cenk? Why are you? Because the right, I saw this last election. A speaker at one of Trump's rallies at MSG came out and said the whole party of Democrats are degenerates, Jew haters, and lowlives. Trump calls Democrats the enemy from within and says we should use the military against them, and then he does use the military against them. He called us fascists and communists, and he's sitting in the fucking White House now. He was belligerent as belligerent can be, and he got to the White House. Why can't we be belligerent and have a little bit of swagger back and build a movement? If people want to come over from the right, that's great. They can come over from the right. But I'm trying to get liberals and leftists and independents and build a massive coalition of 60% of the country that way.
Because it feels to me like you're giving up on convincing them. Whereas
No, just
I
him.
think a lot of them, hold on, just real quick. A lot of them were lied to and believed the lies that Trump was anti-war, as an example. So if we go to them and go, hey guys, remember how you were anti-war? Now Trump is pro-war? You see how he lied to you. I think that that's a much better strategy than saying fraud, liar, you're the worst. And I'm putting Rogan in the same category as Trump. I'm putting Trump voters in the same category as Trump. I'm putting all of you guys in the same, and I'm going to be belligerent towards all of you until I drive you all away. Please don't do that. Please don't do harm.
But Cenk, the gaping hole in your argument is that Trump was a warmonger in the first term, and Mr. Anti-War Joe Rogan still endorsed him after all of his warmongering in the first term, including increase in drone strikes over 400%, bombing Syria twice, bombing Somalia, assassinating Qasem Soleimani, doing every horrible warmonger neocon thing in the world, and he still endorsed him. So maybe Rogan is just a fraud and a lost cause, and he's more like Rush Limbaugh than he is like Bill Hicks. He likes to think of himself as George Carlin or Bill Hicks. He's not. He's like fucking Rush Limbaugh.
And I don't think it's the right strategy. I think the better strategy is
all I'll say
even if it hurts me, because I know how to play. Like, you think I don't know how to play this game? The way to play the game is for me to say I'm the biggest, baddest fighter against the right, and I hate all of their.
It would be great
to
do that.
We would fucking love that.
It would be great if you did that,
I would love it if you did that.
Yeah, we could use you.
You win more viewers.
We could use you in that fight, because that is actually the fight right now. I mean, I would just.
Every time I say
you just said you're not doing that.
Turn around and say the opposite.
So yeah, this was definitely a very heated conversation. Kyle and Cenk both screaming, although Krystal got screamed at much more by Cenk than Kyle did, even though Kyle was much more aggressive. Krystal was kind of calmly and very specifically asking very pointed questions, and Cenk was losing his mind on her way more. Definitely reflections of the conversation that he had with Francesca Fiorentini here, where you can kind of see him in some moments trying to be restrained, but then it's like he also just kind of flies off the handle right away. So it is interesting to see these long form conversations. And the bombast with Cenk it's funny because it's such a tactic for, like, you know, increasing the watchability or the excitement factor of what you do. But Cenk is just not really good at playing. He just comes off more as like a villain character. So I guess if he's trying to do this sort of like wrestling showmanship approach to politics, that I guess is popular with Trump in power, then I don't know. I think he should try to play the heel a little bit more or something. And maybe that's what he's doing here. But I guess, you know, the main thrust of this conversation, not that much progress was made, but I do think that some important things became clear to me about why this conversation isn't working very well. Because I do think that Cenk has gone about things the wrong way, but I think that his actual strategy is not that controversial. When he says that him and Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders have similar strategies, he's not wrong about that, but they have completely different ways of going about it. And even Ro Khanna has faced criticism for, like, the way he talks about being open to, you know, Elon Musk, and that the Democratic Party should be open to taking him back in since he's drifting away. And same kind of logic there. Bernie Sanders as well has, you know, he's faced less criticism than anybody, some, you know, but he kind of has the same approach. He basically said the same thing about Elon should cut the Pentagon. I agree with him on this. I'm willing to work with him on this. But the difference is, first of all, those are politicians who can actually get things done by working with people. So there's a little bit more of an argument for them doing it. But also what they didn't do is get themselves bogged down in this fight with the left. And I get that Cenk feels that he had to do that because whatever. The same thing all the right-wingers say, I guess, that the left has gone too far. and he has to fight the good fight. So he comes off as fighting the good fight against the left. And I guess some right-wingers like to see that. But for, I think, a lot of people that have, spent a lot of time organizing with Cenk or agreeing with Cenk on most things, it suddenly just feels like he is changing his position on progressivism, even though he swears that that's not what he's doing. And some of his coverage has remained pretty consistent. There's a little bit more of a reactionary edge when it comes to crime, or like the LA protests and that sort of thing. But for the most part, it's still, the TYT project is still the same. And Cenk has just gotten himself completely tangled in this fight with the left, that I think has made whatever this political project of his much more difficult. And it also has made it seem like his idea, his goal, is to distance himself from the left. And he says something really interesting towards the end of this debate, where he says, look, I know how to play the game of fighter. If you want me to play that game, I know how to do it. I'll just say I'm the biggest fighter of the right wing and the Nazis, and you got to come through me if you want to be the biggest, baddest. And both Kyle and Krystal are like, yes, we would love it if you would do that. That would be great if you would do that right now. That's what we need on our team. And I think that's true. Cenk's perspective is that taking that angle in a way that isn't outreaching the people who disagree with you is the wrong thing to do right now. However, I think, honestly, taking the fighting approach, I think all people want to see is a fighter. I think that's what people want to see. And I think whatever this certain contingent of mythical Trump voter or whatever that's going to switch sides, they're going to do it if they're seeing him get outfought. If they're seeing somebody who is moving faster and has better ideas and is just meaner than he is and better at fighting than he is. And so that's why that energy from Cenk would be useful. But I think it's also very telling that he's saying that he knows how to do that, because that's honestly the energy that he exhibits towards the left when he says, I am the max left and I'll take all of you on, and I don't care what any of you say, and I'm glad to be hated by the radical left. And so he's playing a game, and he knows he's playing a game, and the game he's playing is trying to position himself as, I guess, a moderate or outside of the left-right wing, this populist idea. And he actually does kind of a Freudian slip there as well at the end, where he says, that's what you're going to do. You're just going to yell and scream and say, I'm right, and fight, and they're all Nazis, and you're going to win. And you're going to win more viewers. He says it just like that. And you kind of don't hear it because he's getting shouted over at that particular moment. But that, I think, is a telling Freudian slip, because even though he's earnestly making the argument, for whatever reason, that he thinks the other strategy will win, he also, it is very possible that just taking the fighting strategy is what will win. And it is weird that Cenk isn't catching on to that, because that's always been his strategy. But what he would say for that is that, he's been doing that this whole time, and now's the time for a different strategy. But I think the opposite. I think that the left and Democrats have not fought this enough, and people have drifted towards the right and drifted towards Republicans because they weren't seeing enough fight from the people who oppose him, and Trump just came off as the more exciting option. I think if you're getting to the level of politics where you're not talking about informed voters and excited voters and building a movement anymore, but you're instead talking about reaching these kind of reaching the kind of apathetic masses, which is an important part of politics. But if that's what you're going to focus on, then that's really what's appealing to those voters, is the most entertaining, most exciting, and most sort of viscerally convincing option. And I think a lot of people voted for Trump on that basis. So if you're chasing those voters, the voters who don't really believe in much, or sort of don't believe in things in the way that we would as people that are paying attention to the political spectrum, but rather they kind of have their own ideas of how things should be. If you're going after those people, especially ones that voted with Donald Trump, people that were convincible by Donald Trump, then yeah, you just got to go for bombast and wrestling moves and flashiness and being the biggest fighter. So maybe that is where Cenk's maybe that's what Cenk's doing here, is that he understands that that's what those people want to see. So that's what he's fighting the left wing for, is because he wants to be somebody that's exciting to people on the right, whether that's as, creating this populism fight or because he wants to run for president. I guess that would be the funniest outcome of all of this, is that Cenk runs another doomed campaign to be president, even though the Constitution would have to be changed, but on the Republican side. So if that's ultimately his end game here, now that I think about it, I'm all for it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm posting different kinds of stuff there, like podcasts that don't make it to the main channel, book reviews, movie reviews. I'm reading Catcher in the Rye right now. I'm probably going to review that on there. Also posting music early. I've got a couple EPs out that were available first for members only. Right now, there's a couple tracks on there. There's a freestyle by me and my buddies Wrecked and Psych. So if you want access to all that, different podcasts and other stuff, become a member. And if there's other kinds of content that you'd like to see for members only stuff, then let me know and we'll work some things out.